Everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Momentum Interview Series. My name is Mo, and I'll be having conversations with different experts in their field. Today's expert is Chad Malchow, VP of Sales at Honeycomb.io. Chad, thanks so much for making the time today. Where does this episode find you?
Thanks, Mo. It finds me right now in Northern California, outside the Sacramento area.
You've had a long sales career, so just walk us through very briefly through your journey in this game.
Sure. Had a lot of little stops here. So came out of college, entered into a management training program with a company called McLean. It's a logistics company headquartered in Texas. I moved on to Hershey Chocolate for about 3 years. I was a sales rep, district supervisor, and I think they call a category manager for a few large grocers on the West Coast. I then entered this world called the dot-com world back then, working for a company called Cosmo, Kozmo.com. And then I worked for 13 years, yes, 13 years, at a startup called Return Path. Started there as a sales rep and moved to manage North America sales, and then took on the customer success team. I left Return Path and joined a company called Kiss Metrics as their CRO. Was there for a short while, probably about 2 years or so. That's where I actually met Bruce Armstrong of Coastal Ventures, and that's what brought me to GitLab. I was GitLab's first CRO for about 3 years and 3 months. Left GitLab, joined Solo.io for a little over a year as their CRO, and now I'm at Honeycomb for the past, I guess, about 1.5 years now. I really enjoy and thrive in the growth phase of companies and really enjoy the DevOps space, which I've been in for probably about the last 6 years or so.
Wow. So how many years is that in total?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that. It makes me feel old. Probably about 22 years.
22 years in sales, growth, and conversions. And then I had one other question. You mentioned Hershey's. Did they give you guys free chocolate, or is that just my...
Yes.
Oh, they did?
Yeah. In my apartment back then, we had shelves of candy. I mean, it was, I don't know, I think Halloween, we had like Valentine's Day candy. So yes, we always had candy. We're supposed to bring in candy for the executive assistants and our buyers. So yeah, everybody took meetings from us, I should say.
Yeah. So when you think about your job right now, what do you spend most of your time doing?
It's probably two, but the most I probably say is just with people. So whether it's one-on-ones, team meetings, just ad hoc meetings, I pride myself on always being available to the team. So people's probably whether I'm spending time with them or thinking about them. Close second is data. So whether I'm ensuring the data is right, analyzing data to see where we want to improve to help the people on the team. So, and a choice 1A and 1B.
So, I mean, looking at data now, you've been at Honeycomb for going on 2 years. Based on the data that's available to you, what's the one approach you can say is making the most impact to the company right now?
For Honeycomb right now, in the past 6 or so months, most impact is the focus we're doing around proof of concepts and leveraging something called command of the message. Here we're like kind of really understanding current state and challenges. We're confirming desire to change at the organizational level, not just the team level. We're defining technical requirements, and then we're really aligning those to business outcomes. And so when you're doing that from a early sales engagement and you bring it over into the sales engineer solutions architect for the POCs, that's the biggest impact, because that's where we're going to win, and we're going to have the deals be the largest possible.
And what are some of the other great challenges that you're facing as a sales leader right now?
In startups, or I should say growth companies, to me, they're always pretty similar. They're aligning a sales methodology and the tools into one cohesive strategy. So there's a lot of sales methodologies out there, but it's kind of doing the one that I think that works well for the team that we have, and then bringing those teams together. So I always refer to myself as a leader who embraces both art and science. Kind of what do I mean by that? I respect the art of sales. I've been a salesperson. I've carried the bag. But I also respect and understand the science, meaning the data that goes into optimizing sales performance. So using data to really help focus reps on where they can be great, so from good to great, and working with them on how they apply that to their selling style. It's really where I say is where the gold is. So I'm a sports person, and there's always practice, and you have these people that watch film. It's the same thing with sales. Is it's your profession, and kind of watching film or listening to recordings and just understanding what are the metrics. In baseball, there's batting averages. In basketball, there's your shooting percentage. In sales, it's win conversion or stage conversion. So I try to apply all those and say, okay, where can we have the biggest impact for you as a sales rep or team?
What's your favorite sport?
To play basketball, to watch, it's a tough one. I'd probably say college basketball. I like college basketball a lot.
So basketball in a nutshell.
Basketball. Now, if it's a Sunday or I just want to relax and stay calm, golf.
Golf. Okay.
It's golf. No, you fall asleep, you can wake up and they're just a few rounds ahead or a few holes ahead. So you don't miss too much.
So, I mean, there's now a lot of talk around the changing nature of sales post-pandemic. So what's one thing about the sales process that you're confident will remain the same now and in the future?
I think you can say selling on value. So understanding the needs of the organization and linking the needs of the individual to the organization. So we're always dealing with people who have problems and they want to solve those problems, but it's linking those to the organization because it's the organization who's going to fund that stuff. So that's what we're looking for. And really, if you tie people's challenges to the impact of the business, you have a winning formula. So I mean, selling on value is going to be key. Having a great product is going to be key. I don't think those will ever change.
And then what's one annoying challenge you faced with remote working now? Because a lot of sales teams have gone remote. What are you guys facing over at Honeycomb and how have you guys tried to solve it?
Always repeating the same answer. So that's the big annoying thing because there's everybody around the world per se that have questions. So how do you solve it is you document. I learned this at GitLab. GitLab is a remote only company. They don't have an office. And so I started there like employee number 24. I think I left there at 400. I think there are about 1,000 employees now. Wow. So at GitLab, this is where I learned it. We had the discipline of documenting everything and helping point people where to find the answer. And if it did not exist, then that person, they had a documented question and answer. So we had this handbook that you go through. It was like, okay, where's the right place to do this? And so it just instilled in people is go look first. If it's not there, ask, and then go put it in there.
Do you think this asynchronous type of communication works across all companies?
To some degree. Async is very helpful to get people to work on their own time frame if it's not urgent, but there's still a lot of value in terms of the getting groups together and brainstorming and flush it out some of this stuff. So I would say it's going to work for every company at some level, but not across the board, not in entirety.
Now, I mean, you've been in sales for quite a while. If you were building a sales team from scratch, what kind of roles or people would you absolutely insist on having for that early success?
In my world of technology and DevOps, I need reps who understand and value technology to help their sales pursuits. So kind of the old school way, I need people who just are using the new sales tools out there consistently. A person who can, for me, if I can find a person who can implement tech into the sales stack and understands how it all works together, that's great. So you think about sales ops, but a lot of times a young company can't have a sales ops person. So if you have somebody that has that ability to bring in the tech and how to apply it, that's great. When you think about that, you think about from Salesforce.com to Outreach to LinkedIn to Momentum, those are stuff I look for. And when I think about a type of a person, the personality, people who do not wait for answers and are told what to do, but seek the answers and trailblaze their way forward. So I got to have just goers who are going to break down walls, are going to figure stuff out, report back, help us get better. I call these, and there's a person at Honeycomb that I call this, I call these sales pioneers. These are kind of the pioneers of the sales organization that got to move forward, trailblaze for the rest of the people coming forward.
So ideally, people who don't seek permission to do what's in the best interest of the company.
People that you trust that they'll do the right thing. It may not be what you think they are, so integrity is super high, but they're going to figure stuff out. And failing is okay, as long as it's not detrimental to the company, and very few things are. So yeah, figure it out, figure what you, so as a sales leader, I don't know nearly, definitely as much as a salesperson any deal. So I'm looking for them to say, here's a current situation, here's what I would do, here are the options I would do, here's why I would do it, let's talk about them. That's all it is. So yeah, I want people to be problem solvers.
So, I mean, speaking of tech, let's talk about tools for a little bit. What's your sales stack like at Honeycomb?
So CRM, we use Salesforce. We use Outreach, and we also use Outreach Kaya. So Outreach for the emails. We use Kaya, which is their video recording and to play back. So I talked about watching your own videos.
Session recording, yeah.
Yep. So that's Outreach Kaya. We use Zoom Info. We use LinkedIn Sales Navigator. We use Slack. We use DocuSign, Calendly, and of course now we use Momentum.
And then what are your thoughts on the future of remote work and the tools that companies are using now to coordinate their teams?
Very timely answer with the world today. So, well, for most of my sales career, I have been remote. So field sales are remote by nature. So at GitLab, and if you remember, I said GitLab, we were remote only. So this was so GitLab was my first experience with everybody being remote, not just me or a sales team or offices, everybody's remote. Honeycomb was moving to embrace remote workers before COVID hit anyways. Like my first week was the week before the lockdowns and quarantine. I think remote work is here to stay and is a good thing for both the employees and employers. Now, I do see the value of having offices and or events. So at GitLab, we had things called summits to get team members and bring them together. That's very important in a remote world. Companies will need to embrace technology to support a remote team, but more importantly, I think they need to have a culture that supports it. You can't just say you're remote and not really act that way or do things around that. And what I mean by this to have a culture is like around documenting I talked about before, and just making information easily accessible to everyone. A culture that does not also treat people who work remote differently and assures people on video or like a phone have equal airtime for those in the room. So it's a muscle that a lot of companies need to practice and they need to work on as they have people work remotely.
I like that reference to culture. What's one experiment that you've run with your team lately that you were especially proud of? I mean, this could be related to sales workflow, training, hiring, etc. It doesn't matter if it failed or succeeded.
So we just did a sales pitch where everybody got together and practiced the sales pitch. So typically you go into the room and you have people go up and you do role playing. Well, now we just use Zoom. We have people, all different people do this and learn from it. And whether they're here for 2 years or 2 days, they got to experience this out there. But we're also continuing to do, I want to call them experiments. I learned this from GitLab, is doing summits or get-togethers. So we're doing our kind of a sales meeting to get the sales team together because for long as I've been here, we've never been the same place at once. And most of us have never met each other. So we're going to get together and do that. And as a company, we're all getting together as well to spend time with each other. Yeah, do a little bit of work, but also just do a lot of bonding. And again, stuff I've learned when at my time at GitLab.
I like that. Let's go on a little bit of a tangent here. So have you ever met or hired an introverted salesperson? I mean, do you think introverts would do well in the world of sales, or do you absolutely need to have that exuberant energy that extroverts bring?
I have hired, I have met, and I have known very successful salespeople that are introverts in life, but in their profession, they can pull it over to be an extrovert. So I don't think you need to be that quintessential, like people stereotype, oh, that outgoing salesperson out there. I also think it's going away because sales is happening, especially in the technology DevOps space. Sales is happening within Slack, within email, within Zoom. And so you no longer have to be in that position where you're on a stage or you're in a big room, which a lot of introverts might find overwhelming. So I think that's changing quite a bit.
So you've probably been involved in a few hiring rounds in your career. What's the one red flag that would make you instantly disqualify candidates?
If they are talking about how much money they make or want to make, I'm so not interested in that. We know that might be the end game, but that's a huge red flag for me. That's probably by far the number one thing. Number two, I'd probably say is, I know you asked for one, but when they don't give any specifics. So salespeople, marketing people, they're usually really good at creating like a cloud and little vapor out there. So I want to get into specifics and understand how you've done something, not just the what you've done.
So those are the red flags. What would make you swipe right on them?
What would make swipe right? Someone who's super curious. Someone who comes with great questions. Someone who's looking to learn. Someone who's done their research and they're saying, "Hey, but I've seen this. How about this? Why have you done this?" That becomes very interesting to me because they're leaning in and they want to learn and they want to share.
Great. Okay. So I think that's going to be super helpful for any salespeople who want to come and work under you at some point and maybe draw on your years of experience. Now, let's switch gears a little bit and get a little personal. What's your best productivity tip?
I don't think it's huge or mind blowing, but for me, it's just blocking off time. Blocking off time for everything you need to do. So especially like lunch in your personal time. So we get in a world that you don't have to like walk down halls and get a little chatter. And you just go to meeting after meeting after meeting, and you can forget to have your lunch or eating time or just personal time just to decompress out there. So to me, if it's not written down and for me on my calendar, things can get missed. So I'm not saying we do everything, but I need to have things written down and what I'm supposed to be doing. So I like to have actions or next steps written down to commit to and hold myself accountable. Kind of like a sales pursuit. This is why I'm a salesperson at heart.
And then which recent sales book or podcast episode or a talk left a mark on you?
The one that left a mark on me, I don't even know how long ago this was, 15 years ago probably. It's Simon Sinek. It's a TED Talk talking about how great leaders inspire. He talks about the what, the how, and the why. So kind of the target. The why being the center and ensuring your audience is bought into the why. To me, this translates not only to leading teams and organizations, but also selling. So when people are bought into the why we're doing stuff, it doesn't matter how you do it or what you're doing. So that really resonated with me. And I use that today and often. And when I talk to my team and just in sales.
And then who's one person or team in the sales game right now that you really admire?
Sales development reps. I was never an SDR, but coming into this world where you have to do cold calling, I did a lot of cold calling in a different type of world in consumer packaged goods, but it's a tough job. It can be a very thankless job, but it's a very important job for the business.
What's the one thing you think you could still work on as a salesperson?
I think empathy would be one I can work on. Yeah, I think empathy would be the one I just keep on working on. And the other one, I think communication. Like we always think we can communicate well, we can always do better. So I think balancing out empathy with communication is something I can always work on.
If you were not working in sales right now, what would you be doing professionally instead?
Coaching basketball. Preferably,
I knew you were going to say that.
Preferably youth basketball.
Right.
So I don't know if that could be done professionally, but I would prefer youth basketball.
Have you been involved in any sort of coaching programs in the time that you've been playing basketball your whole life?
I have 3 boys. My oldest is going to be 18. So I have coached them in almost every sport you can think about. Basketball is the one I've probably coached the least on because they've gone more into baseball and soccer. So I've been involved in youth coaching in basketball and baseball and soccer for the past 18 years.
Do you think you'll ever retire, Chad?
Only when I cannot work anymore. I mean, I will always, it may not be in a role I see or I have today, but my next chapter after this, my work will be advising companies and figure out how I can help, whether it's the venture capital world or whatever, other leaders, other founders take this step in their journey and their growth. So that's what I'd see doing for the next 40, 50 years after this.
And then there's a question that I'll ask everybody I interview. If you were starting your career all over again, what would you do differently?
I don't know if I do anything differently, but if I'm going to give you an answer, I would say if I got into tech sooner, so I didn't get into technology till the 2000s. If I got into tech sooner, then I would get into a role like an SDR role as quickly as possible. That's what I tell my oldest son if he's going to go into business at Baylor University. I said, hey, if you want to do technology, like get into a company early, learn. And I say this because I was fortunate to work for many companies that had really good training. McLean and Return Path had really good training, management training. So I would just say, when you're looking at SDR, you can learn so much there, but make sure the company, you have the resources to learn in that job, the tools, the training, a strong mentor, and really an environment to fail. And so you're going to quickly learn if that's something you want to do. And if it is, you're going to learn how to be very successful very quick and get into a sales career and wherever you want to go after that.
Thanks so much, Chad, for making time to speak to us today. We've been speaking to Chad Malchow, who's the VP of Sales at Honeycomb.io. Chad, we'll catch you again next time.
Appreciate the time, Mo.